Let's talk about these global food shortages. Now, a few weeks ago, if you were paying attention, I don't know if you were paying attention, maybe you were living under a rock at the time, and you might have missed President Biden admitting that all of those food shortages that you've been hearing so much about, yeah, that's actually a thing. They're real. If you need a refresher, here is President Biden in Brussels talking about these food shortages and saying, yeah, it's a thing. Watch.
The food shortage. Yes, we did talk about food shortages, and it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia; it's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well. And because both Russia and Ukraine have been the breadbasket of Europe in terms of wheat, for example, just to give you one example. But we had a long discussion in the G7 with both the United States, which has a significant, the third largest producer of wheat in the world, as well as Canada, which is also a major producer. And we both talked about how we could increase and disseminate more rapidly food shortages. In addition to that, we talked about urging all the European countries and everyone else to end trade restrictions on sending limitations on sending food abroad. And so we are in the process of working out with our European friends what it would take to help alleviate the concerns relative to food shortage.
Okay. Did you get all that? It's going to be real, and it's going to be hard, and it's all Putin's fault. Well, let's kind of cut through that. What do you know? Those food shortages that he's been calling fake over the last few months, prior to all of this, by the way, are now real. There's a war on the other side of the world that we can blame it on. So now it's real, right? Well, now it's looking more and more apparent that we are about to face a massive global food shortage. I mean, just look at Beijing, right? Here's Beijing. If you missed this, these are residents this week who are worried about these lockdowns, where they're freaking out, stocking up on food as quickly as they can. There's a run on grocery stores there. There are a few scary signs, guys, that this shit is about to hit the fan in a big way. So let's go through some of the reasons why this is going to get bad and in the ways in which it's unfolding, and why I should say, like, this is different than what we've been told before. Remember back in January 2022, we saw, just a few months ago, we saw in Australia that empty supermarket shelves. They blamed it on Omicron. Then we saw, let's go through the list here. Back in September of this year, in September 2021, the United Kingdom was told that gas price spike would create a shortage of frozen food. Remember that? We covered that in the newsletter.
Yes.
And just a month later, we may have to ration meat ahead of Christmas. This was the big warning. You might have to ration meat due to the gas crisis. And beer. There was never any rationing, though. So we kept hearing all of these like, oh, okay, it's okay. Is it going to be bad? No, it's okay. Well, now, as President Biden just pointed out regarding food shortages, yes, we did talk about shortages, and they're going to be real. And which is, as we've been thinking about here, a really odd thing to say, if not that you've been having these conversations in private. I think the thing about Biden is that he lets slip some of these private conversations, which are not meant for public consumption.
Yes.
And most of the time, you don't really say this stuff out loud, but then he's like, yeah, we talked about these food shortages, and yeah, it's going to be real. It's going to be bad, and we're talking about all wheat supply crunch, and it's going to be really terrible.
But I think when we think about food shortages and empty supermarket shelves, it's very psychological, because we only feel safe if the shelves are stocked and still stocked when we walk away, which tells our human psyche there will be more later, so I do not have to forward think, right? I don't have to grow my own. I don't have to think about, my own livestock. I don't have to think about where my safe water comes from. So knowing that 1/3 of the food produced in this planet right now goes to waste because of the wasteful ways of Western nations, can we even think about food shortages beyond just the psychological effect of it? Think of the psychological effect of toilet paper. When we thought we couldn't have any, we literally did not know what to do with our own assholes, right?
Right.
Given that toilet paper is an invention of the last 50 years, humans would have had a way to still poop, but we did not think so. So when we think that if the shelves are not full and colorful, we are unsafe,
Right.
when in fact there is enough food for everybody. The planet just doesn't know how to distribute it.
Well, I mean, we could see
Not the planet. I'm sorry.
The humans.
Humans do not know how to distribute it.
Well, I mean, so okay, then it's a global, but there is a global food supply shortage if in all of these pieces then aren't necessarily working correctly together.
But there's
right?
not. There's not a global food. The largely unpublicized reality is that the world already feeds enough to feed 10 billion people, but we're told that we only have 7 billion now. We will have 10 billion by 2050, but we have more than enough. We have a third more than we eat.
Well, there are, according to Off Guard, I want to go through this piece by Kit Knightley, and who really breaks down like 5 signs that they are creating a food crisis, the powers that be.
But again, it's a psychological food crisis because there's enough food. We just don't know how to access it. Again, I think the point Philip made last week is we pull it out of the ground and put it behind bars where humans can't get it, right? But this is a recent economy, right, of getting food from other people who grow it and keep it away from us.
Well, then how do
so
we...
the more that we psychologically agree that there's a shortage, the harder that it makes it.
Okay, so then we just all sit back and psychologically not agree
but
that
we,
it's not.
we also.
Let me just go through. Let's
Okay.
go through these points.
All right,
and
you make your point, and I will.
Well, I'm not making my. I'm just going to go through the data points here, and then we can judge them whether it's just psychological or it's real. We've already seen rationing of sunflower oil, a major Ukrainian export, with reports that this could extend to all kinds of other products, including sausages, chicken, pasta, beer. This didn't need to happen. It was all preventable, of course.
20% of all seed oils go to waste, but okay, go ahead.
Okay. An increasing price of oil. So we know that the high price of oil has already been seen the Russian ruble bounce back to pre-war strength, as they point out. Yet Saudi Arabia has been increasing their prices, not flooding the market to tank prices as they did in 2014 and 2015. So the cost of petroleum high is a deliberate policy decision. Again, artificially inflated, which is, we've been calling bullshit on that here on the show for quite a while. When President Biden wants to get up there and talk about Putin's price hike, we know that that's a pile of garbage because it's not. It has nothing to do with that. Prices were going up because OPEC decided to raise the prices. So any resultant food shortages are engineered on purpose. I mean, this is the point of this piece in Off Guardian, is that these are 5 signs they are creating a food crisis. So
They already have been, is my point. They'd been doing it before a war, simply because of the supply chain, which only caters to rich people and wealthy nations.
bird flu is another piece. Go ahead, Philip.
Oh, when I first went to university, it was at Ball State in back in 2004. Yep, I was environmental chemistry major, and so I did a lot of work with a soil science professor there. And we were talking back in 2004, how there's plenty of food being created. It's a supply thing that they don't have the will to get it everywhere. They don't want to, and so even back then.
And what is this is the great question here. Why? Why do they not want to distribute it to the rest of the world? Like, why is Africa starving? Why are people in Afghanistan have no food? Why?
Because they won't pay the inflated prices for individually wrapped processed crap that Americans will. And where's the processed? Where's the profit, right? According to the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization, industrialized nations waste 670 million tons of food. And a third of fruit and vegetables are discarded because they don't meet cosmetic standards. So an ugly apple could be just as tasty, but we throw it out, right? Supermarket chains are some of the worst culprits, driving perfectionism and squander mountains of fresh and cooked products post-delivery. Restaurants throw out a lot of food as well. They serve massive portions that just don't get eaten and they can't reuse. And then in 1996, the government outlawed feeding leftover to pigs. Now a lot of it goes to landfill, and more crops are needed to grow bacon. Almost 97% of global soy production is used for animal feed. We have enough, right? But we don't have enough to package beautifully and mark up the sales for profits of food companies.
And another reason we could have these problems, of course, is that there's been a weird, I've been following this, but I haven't, been able to really wrap my head around like what the hell's going on here. But there's been a number of these food distribution centers that have been catching on fire, and these food plants. And I get texts about it sometimes, or tweets about it, and some direct messages about it. But if you look at it, it's in fact true. There have been a number of food processing plants that have been catching on fire lately across the country, randomly. Like, why are these food processing plants just randomly catching on fire? A number of them across the country, seemingly unrelated, but probably very much related. Can anyone point their finger to exactly what this is? NEFAC says, there we go. Thanks, Clayton. It's exactly what we're talking about. Like soybean processing plants, like they're just catching on fire. What's behind this bullshit? Like, what, anybody has any ideas, let us know.
Well, it's interesting because I read an article on Reddit, I think it was just yesterday, but somebody was posting their job. They work in a food processing plant, and they do like baked goods, and that their bosses put out a memo that all employees that are on the line are considered essential. So if the fire alarm goes off, they're not supposed to evacuate when everybody else does. They're supposed to wait to make sure it wasn't a false alarm, so they have to wait for a second fire alarm to go off before they're allowed to leave. And it was just like, it's almost like they see it coming.
Right, exactly. And also imagine asking your employees like, hey, we know you make shit money here. You make no money really at all, right? You're working 18-hour days on your feet, standing in puddles of stuff. You're not even allowed to go to the bathrooms. We've shown you the videos of the people at the chicken processing plants who literally turn around and pee on the floor right there because they don't want to be docked pay by going down the hallway to the bathroom, right? You're asking those people to put their lives on the line so that chicken can get processed more quickly. I mean, these were the people that were considered these were the people where we saw the biggest outbreaks of COVID, by the way.
Yes.
These were the frontline, these were the hazard workers that, got paid crap and were on the front lines and got walked all over by big business.
But I think that if we buy into this narrative that, oh my God, empty shelves, we must stockpile food, right? We eat up their narrative, pun intended, and we bring ourselves more and more into a place where we're dependent on this psychological comfort of stocked shelves of individually wrapped things, right? And so this sort of hippie movement of grow your own or use co-ops or, eat locally, buy locally is more of a sort of stick it to the man movement than ever, because we wouldn't be quite so freaked out about food shortages if we were not so dependent on this economy of humongous scale, right? I mean, think about it. In wealthy countries alone, 222 million tons of food each year is thrown away. That's very nearly the net food production of sub-Saharan Africa. So what all of Africa, sub-Saharan Africa needs, we throw in the bin. So if you can sort of like change your relationship to what you need to see in the supermarket and reject these narratives of like panic, the better off we all are.
Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. A crypto trucker in our chat says, my son works at a chicken farm and a lot of them around here are being burnt up. That's unbelievable. Like, what the hell is going on? And it could be, we talked about right now 27 million poultry birds, chickens destroyed in the United States alone because of bird flu. So then, of course, you have bird flu on top of this mess, right? Lockdowns. You have bird flu. You have plants being destroyed. You have food processing plants being destroyed. And then you have the United States and the UK paying farmers to stop farming.
Oh, they've been doing that since World War II. But
yeah.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
I mean, but you have a state level plan in California going to pay farmers to grow less, right? Because of saving water. So of course you're conserving on the water, but you're not farming as much. The UK has a similar program going on. Again, totally different reasons. Starting this past February, the British government is paying lump sums of £100,000 to any farmers who want to retire from farming. Again, a strange policy during a period of geopolitical unrest impacting the food supply. Seems like an odd choice, right?
Yes, but they did this during World War II as well, so not really an odd choice. I'm going to recommend a great book called Wilding, returning nature to our farm by a woman whose family were dairy farmers in the UK, and they were subject to these exact same post-World War pressures and subsidies, and what they did to actually take advantage of the UK's tax incentives to stop farming, and then they rewilded their land. Anyone can break their dependency on supermarkets in this economy, but it takes some thought. And I remind you of the interview I've mentioned many times with Tom Wheelwright, who is one of our tax mentors and wealth advisors. And he said when he was touring around Zimbabwe, he took a tour and he asked his tour guide, what did you do when your economy collapsed and basically all the money in your bank was worth nothing? And the tour guide said, this is how I survived, is every time I got a paycheck or got a job and got paid, I would go out and buy something that would continue to produce for my family, like a goat or a chicken or a cow or something like that. So, it's incumbent on all of us right now to think about when we have a little bit of extra money, when we get paid for our job, what is it that qualifies as our goat or chicken or cow? It could be a literal chicken, right? And then you have eggs. Which actually we just became chicken parents yesterday, and that is super fun. Or it could be, right, a Bitcoin. It could be whatever it is that you think you can depend upon, because I think these stories continue to pile up on us and tell us we cannot depend on the global supply chain. We have to think differently, right?
Right.
What is it? Like a gray tank in your, I don't know what it is, but this is my little push for you to think for yourself what it is you need. What's your goat and chicken?
Are you familiar with aquaponics, where it's a small closed system? For those that don't know, it's a small closed system. Like usually, a lot of times they'll use like the really big like plastic barrels, but you can grow tilapia, which is a fish which naturally like wants to school in close clumps. You can put duckweed on top, and that's what they eat, and then it ends up a closed system where you can have like continuous fish come out of this system. And so
wow.
I know people here in Portland that.
That's like
they actually
Epcot
specialize
Center
in that.
shit right there.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.